We
can start. It's almost time. So, namaste everyone, and welcome to the Dhishana Orientation. Just little housekeeping item before we begin. We put everyone on mute, and you can't unmute yourself, just to make sure that the presentation goes smoothly. At the Q&A session, we will open up for anyone to ask any question. If you want to raise your hand, then we will unmute you and you can ask your question. And if you feel like, you can feel free to type in as well in the chat, and we will address these Q&As from there as well. So I'm just going to get started.
Bhagini, do you want to wait for a few more minutes for others to come, or you want to get going?
Okay, let's just give another minute or two.
Yeah, I think usually
Sure.
people show up like
5 minutes. Yeah. They connect at 7 and then, yeah. Let me just pause the recording then. So.
Okay.
Let's get started now. Namaste everyone. Welcome to Dhishana Orientation. Just a little housekeeping items. We want to mute everyone, and you won't be able to unmute yourselves. This is just to make sure that the presentation goes smoothly. But at the end, when we open up the Q&A session, we will address your questions. So feel free to raise your hand, and we will unmute you, and you can ask whatever questions you have. At the same time, if you feel like, you're more than welcome to actually type in your question in the chat, and we will address it from there as well. So I'm gonna just get started. We're going to talk about the Agastya Gurukulam, Why, How, and What by Sri Balaji. Vijaya Vishwanathan, she's going to share one of her personal experience. Then going to give a little bit information. My name is Sangeeta Bhari. I'll be giving a little bit more information about the camp. And I'm going to hand it over to Sri Balaji.
Dhanyawada Bhagini. So namaste everybody. So I'm going to talk about like why we have this program that we created for kids, and then we're going to talk about like how we're going to go and what's going to be the content for the teaching program. So let's get started with the why. I'm sure all of your kids are going to regular schools here, and our kids, especially going to schools in North America, whether it's Canada or in the US. They have their own set of problems that they face in terms of building their own self-image. It's pretty popular that they're all called ABCDs. I think it'll be good if everybody can mute. And the whole environment here tends to mainstream our kids to kind of adopt to what a regular American does. But although in a typical environment, a typical independent environment, everybody should be able to be who they are or be different and still be able to contribute to the society that they live in. Unfortunately,
Balaji, your voice is breaking up a little bit. So I don't know if you want to have the video off just to make sure you save the bandwidth.
Okay. Is it any better now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. So I was talking about like how our kids are getting mainstreamed and how they are not able to be themselves and be able to contribute to society. And it's because of how Western societies are typically built.
Again, trouble, Balaji.
Okay, so yeah, this has been happening in the regular classes too. Let's see, I'm hoping
it's fine. It's fine now. It's fine now. I think it's maybe the way you're sitting, or I don't know.
I don't know. So it could be like the internet connectivity also. Maybe I'll keep my phone away. I hope that's not interfering with the. How is it? Is it better now?
It's better. Yeah.
Okay. So can we go to slide number 5, Bhagini? Yeah. So because of the way Western societies are, and because of what colonization baggage we come up with, right, we typically have this issue of our kids getting mainstreamed. And it's important for us to realize that when we go into any society, we go in with a lot of knowledge that could be very helpful to our society, as long as the individual that brings that knowledge has the confidence to be able to propagate it within the new society that they are in. However, because there is mainstreaming, most of our kids, I'm sure a lot of you will be able to relate, most of our kids end up losing their mother tongue here in the US or in Canada. Their mother tongue typically becomes English, which is very unnatural. Although studies show that it's very important for kids to learn, speak, and not only speak, read, and write in their mother tongue, but also read other subjects like mathematics, science, and so on in the mother tongue, for them to have the best output. And there are multiple studies, including studies done by the UN, that talks about how mother tongue, knowledge of mother tongue is very important for any kid. There is a whole book written by Sakant Sanu on this, called English Medium Myth, that you guys may be interested in reading. So loss of mother tongue also creates a serious loss of elimination of knowledge about our literature, right? Although we do tell a lot of stories, or even give them books about Ramayana, Mahabharata, and so on, but that's only just scratching the surface. There is so much of literature in whatever your mother tongue may be, and in Sanskrit, that they are completely not aware of. And there's literature, that's poetry and prose, that people would be interested in learning if they have an artistic thought process. If there is also a lot of food for logic, science, and mathematics, and all the entire knowledge system that we have in India gets completely disconnected because of this. And this also creates a disconnect with the immediate family, like their ability to converse the way we conversed with our grandparents is also very disconnected. And the overall Indian EQ that these kids need to have for them to have a good cultural context, and also have the ability to solve problems in an Indian way, that's completely missing in most of these kids that we see, right? So, and the distance factor also contributes to this in a very big way, where we're all far away. Maybe once in a couple of years or once in a year, we end up going to India, and the exposure to the Indian environment is also very minimal for these kids. Moving on. So this slide, I'm talking about like what are all the effects of the Western schooling system. While this is happening on one side, where they're getting mainstreamed and very little knowledge is getting passed from parents to son or daughter, there is also pressure for them to conform with their classmates, because of the peer environment that they are in. And I've known kids who are not willing to take a chapati or a dosa to school, because they think that they would just be counted out of the regular group of kids in school, right? And then you have this heavy teaching of American exceptionalism that happens in the school system here, where the kids also tend to get an idea that they belong to a very modern culture, while their parents belong to a very a losing culture, or a very backward culture in some ways. And that creates a big divide, or a bigger gap than the generation gap that we all had with our parents. Going on, in terms of what these schools do, they teach our kids a lot of critical thinking, so to say, where as some of you might already know, the school system and the college system in the US is a pathway to critical thinking, critical reasoning, and atheism, right? As you know, the Western societies are fast losing the belief system in Christianity, and because Christianity gets questioned in a very logical way. And that ends up in a scenario that most of these kids, most of the mainstream US kids, by the time they get to college and beyond, they kind of end up not going to the church, and they become very independent either atheistic or agnostic person, right? This also tends to happen to our kids, because they start asking questions to you when you talk about Kailash or Shivji or Vaikunt and Vishnu and so on. They're going to ask you, like, show me in the map where these places are. Who's Vishnu? And I've never seen him. Why are you actually talking about all this, right? So you need to be able to reason all this out. And fortunately, our Shastras have the ability to reason each and every aspect of our belief system, and have a very logical body of knowledge built on top of each one of our aspect of our religion, right? Unfortunately, as parents, we tend not to know about all this, because we ourselves have been going through Macaulay School of Education, Macaulay education system, and we ended up getting colonized to our learning. And it's very hard for us to actually help our kids with their questions around critical thinking. And typically it ends up that our kids are getting mainstreamed because of this key reason. The other thing is the school system, because it's only based on critical thinking. There is no aspect of rasa that is taught to our kids. We have like the rasa or bhava that we were taught at a very young age to show shraddha or bhakti or the various other bhavas that are there in the rasa theory of India. I don't want to go deep into it, but the whole idea of rasa is very much missing in the current STEM-based school system that is present in this country or in Canada today. So these affect the kid in ways that end up creating a very non-Indian personality for the kid, however hard we might try. So we need to kind of create a methodology that can help the kid retain his or her Indianness, and also be a good citizen of whatever country that they are in, right? And we're going to talk about the how in the next section. Let's go to the next section here. So the idea is for us to restore Indian education that revolved around not just religious education. Typically, when you think about Indian education, we think about religious education, and we end up just stopping at like teaching Bhagavad Gita, or maybe having the kid learn some bhajans or some kirtan, and that's the end of what we typically teach. Or we teach the Puranas and Ramayana, Mahabharata, and so on. And that is mostly to the extent to which we are all educated about India. However, India had a full-blown school system that had mathematics, that had chemistry, that had physics, astronomy, geography, of course, Sanskrit and other subjects, right? Including subjects in philosophy and religion and so on. Okay? So this has been around for a long time, for time immemorial. Of course, the last 800 years, it's been slowly eliminated till it got completely eliminated after the Britishers came in and they came up with the Macaulay School of Education. But the good thing that the good news that we all have is that the older system had a good amount of critical thinking built into it, right? That is very appealing to a modern kid, right? And there's good amount of scientific rigor. This STEM logic, that STEM we talk about here in terms of science and technology and engineering, mathematics type education, was very much built into the previous system with appropriate logic built into it as well. So that's an exciting thing that we have as an alternative to the current school system, or as something that can actually enhance the current school system, right? This can actually run as a complete school system in itself if somebody decided to start off from kindergarten level to all the way up to 12th grade or beyond, right? So that is actually the beauty of the system, because it's reasonably complete and has the ability for you to develop all the faculties of the kid and not be as dependent on the regular school system. That is the beauty of the level of completeness of the Indian education system that was present and was offered to all classes within India, unlike what you might have read in your history books, which said that only the upper class Indians were educated, which is not actually true. All four varnas in the Indian system were educated through this system. And what is good about the system beyond the coverage in STEM, it also is built with rasa, right? And it is also built with a higher goal. Every time you learn mathematics, you just do not actually stop at mathematics. Even the way you learn mathematics and the goal of mathematics ends up in understanding that there is a greater truth beyond mathematics that people are supposed to be searching for. So that's the idea of our shastras always aiming at a greater goal than that shastra that you're reading it. So which is actually very absent in the modern school system, right? And the other important thing about our school system is that it is built with Indian symbols, right? Typically, because we went through the Macaulay school system, we did not actually gain a lot of confidence about Indian symbols today, right? So, it's very hard for us to walk around with a dhoti here. It's very hard for us to walk around with a tilak here, but while the Westerner is very happy walking around with shorts and t-shirt in India, whether it's a man or a woman, right? They're very happy to actually walk around with a lot of confidence back in India. That's because we have not actually built enough confidence in our own self, in our own identity. And these symbols are built into the school system. And when somebody actually go through that schooling, like how people go through schooling here, they feel very comfortable with who they are. So they, because if you're really learned, like a very good example would be Gandhiji, although, not all of us may be fans of Gandhiji, but, one thing that we can really appreciate in him is, he wore a dhoti and went to the round table conference in UK. And the idea is, he was very comfortable in being himself, right? Not that we want our kids to walk around like that, but, if they decide to do what they feel most comfortable about, they should not have a mind block because of a mainstreaming effect that they have in their head. So that we want to definitely eliminate that with providing them with the option of all the Indian symbols and Indian arts and cultural options available, and they're free to choose what they want to do, but free to choose with freedom, with courage, right? And not with an idea of being suppressed about a certain thought, right? And so overall, this education has been very it's well integrated and very holistic, and unfortunately, it's not available in today's world. And our effort at Agastya is to rebuild this education, right? And we have been doing research on understanding what was there in that education and bringing those subjects, learning those subjects. Sometimes we ourselves have to learn those subjects and be able to teach our kids. And we have got experts in all these areas helping us. And that through that, we are able to provide a reasonably holistic education that can stand independently by itself, where you decide that I don't want to put my kid in a regular school. I could actually have the kid work through this syllabus, and Vijayaji has done that for a good part, and she's going to talk about that a little bit, and get my kid homeschool. Or I would like for the kid to have that school experience, but I'd like an alternate education for the kid on the side so that he can get the best out of both worlds, right? So both are possible through Agastya, right? And it's based on the holistic principles of Panchamahayajna, where you are not just thinking about education, but just in books, but also you are connected with the environment, where you are performing on a daily basis Bhuta Yajna, and you're connected to the fellow people through Manusha Yajna, and to be connected with learning as a yajna, which is actually Brahma Yajna, and also be connected to our directly to parents and also our forefathers, which is actually Pitra Yajna, right? And of course, all this is culminating in Deva Yajna, or to be connected to the divine as well, right? So these values need to be built into the school system itself, and of course today's school system does not have any of this, but in what we are doing, we got all this integrated into Agastya's program here, right? And I'll just go through the next couple of slides pretty quickly. I think I've taken a lot more time than what I'm supposed to. So the core of the Indian school system is based on what's called Ashtadasha Vidyasthanani. Of course, it's got 4 Vedas and 6 Vedangas, 4 Upangas and Upavedas. I guess not to actually explain all this here, but it's got a tremendous amount of knowledge in both what's called the so-called secular education and the religious aspect of education. In Agastya, we will focus on the secular side a little bit more, because the religious education, typically, if you are part of any ashram or some sampradaya, you are already learning some religious education. So we want to keep it sampradaya neutral, but focus on the aspect of secular education of India, which includes things from Ashtadasha Vidyasthanani and Chatushashti Kala, or the 64 different art forms. Not that we're going to teach all of them, but we plan to teach a few of them from here as well, right? All this will fall into the regular subjects as you would typically see in school, right? Science, math, and so on. What was taught in India was also very similar, and you will also, if you are a student of history, you would know that a lot of what we learn in school today has ended up coming from India, whether it is science or mathematics or even language, some of English grammar as well. All this is influenced by Indian education. That's why what you see here is actually a copied over version. So what we are encouraging you to do is to learn from the original, because the original will always have a few more tricks than what the copy does, right? So moving on, let's go to what is in the Dhishana program. Bhagini, maybe you can come back to this. I know you're going to talk about this. So quickly, Bhagini, I think the slides are a little, yeah, let's go to the what, and then we'll come back to the advantages, right? So what we are going to do is to teach some of these subjects, and this is actually a long-term program. So if you are going to get your kids enrolled, we would like for you to think about a long-term commitment, not just these 3 weeks and you want to break away, right? That's not going to make a big difference. In these 3 weeks, it's like a jump start thing for the kid, right? Maybe some kids won't like it and they want to drop off. We want to respect that, but it's a jump start thing. But the kid and the parents have to be committed to deep learning. It's not like learning, I'm going to learn 4 shlokas and I'm going to say that in front of my puja room in front of my mandir, and that is the Indianness that I'm going to give my kid. That is not what this is. This is actually commitment to deep learning of our shastras. And can we go back to that slide, the 10th slide, please? No, the previous one. I think we talked about the. No, sorry. That's 14. Slide number 14, please. Yeah. So, and then, I think you moved again, 14. Yeah. So, and then building expertise in one or many fields, right? We are talking about, it could be like expertise in Sanskrit, or expertise in Indian mathematics or Ganita, or expertise in Jyotisha Ganita, which is astronomy, right? Or expertise in Rasayana Shastra and so on, right? Not that they're going to be experts on day one, but we're going to have expertise in multiple areas, but we'll have some exposure that we'll give during the initial camp, right? And the Bhagini, if you can actually go back to that, and we'll come back to this screen in a little bit, the screen that we are, slide number 14, please. Yes. So yeah. So I do want to talk about back to the screen where we talked about the multi-level program, where the program that we are thinking is initially a shibiram, which is going to be for 3 weeks, and then we would continue to move on and deliver weekly classes. Typically, it takes about 4 hours a week, and then some homework, right? And then throughout the year, we will have this 4 hours plus homework type thing. And at the end of the year, we would have another shibiram for level 2, right? So this is the plan that we have. And this current shibiram, we are thinking about doing Samskrita Sambhashanam, which is actually to be able to speak in Sanskrit. And we'll be using Samskrita Bharati's technique and giving them full credit for developing an excellent technique to help teach Sanskritam in the spoken form. And then of course reading and writing is something that we will have as part of this. As also, if your kid doesn't know how to read and write, we'll have a separate special class for reading and writing. And then the next thing we're going to do is Jyotisha Ganita, where we're going to do calculations for Grahanam to find out like how to calculate eclipse days. That is something that we're going to be teaching as part of Jyotisha Ganitam. Then we are going to teach Ganitam, which will contain geometry and mensuration, that we're going to cover in this 3 weeks. And then, I forgot to mention one very important thing about having its historical context, because that builds a lot of confidence, and we'll talk about the advantages of having the history aspect. So typically, we were all taught history that was given by the communists, that kind of eliminated the goodness about Indian history, the valor about our Purvajas having some great success, and overall to know that India is a successful civilization that has been continuous for several thousand years is something that none of the school kids in India have a very good idea about. To know that we have a history of victory rather than a history of defeat is something that's very important for the kid to know, for he or she to build self-confidence in themselves, right? And we will actually cover some aspects of that. And another important thing about learning through Agastya is to learn Purva Paksha, right? We see a lot of current scenarios that are going on today, right? Recently there has been a big hue and cry about jati based or caste based discrimination that is getting really flared up in the US. And recently we had Article 370 that has come up, and we had a scenario of Ayodhya verdict that caused some tension here as well. So our kids are exposed to the other narrative when they go to school here, right? So we do good scholarly research in these areas and present the Indian narrative, present of course both the narratives, so that the kids can understand both the narratives and for them to make sense out of what is right and what is wrong. So we've done if you talk to our Augusta students today, they would be able to talk in a very eloquent form with good knowledge about these modern day subjects, with the background of the Indian story as well, right? And then another thing that we want to do is about Paryavaranam, which is an environment. So we are this year we are thinking of actually helping the kids understand the importance of the various types of trees in India and the wood that's available from those trees and what are the uses of those. So that way they'll understand why they need to protect these trees, especially the flora and fauna in India, right? So this is kind of the high level overview of what we're going to teach. And I want to quickly go to the advantages slide and tell you why this would be very helpful. I've already talked to you a little bit about these aspects. I want to reiterate that this will help build a lot of self-confidence about themselves and their identity. As a kid growing up, they have this confusion as to, I belong to a culture, but my culture seems to be the culture that is lost. The overall battle of economy, battle of success, and my parents seem to be people who have actually given up on their homeland, and they're here because they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel in India, right? So they obviously, whatever you might say, they may have that thought process running on the back of their heads, and we can really help fix that, right? And then other important things, by learning mathematics, learning sciences, and so on through this, they will gain a varied set of pathways to solve typical problems. I'll just give you a quick example here. Agastya kids today, if you give them a problem just as simple as simple arithmetic of addition, division, subtraction, multiplication, or doing squaring, or calculating the square root, or cubing and cube root, they will give you 3, 4, 5 methods in each, while the regular school going kid will only know one method. That's because we are teaching directly from Lilavati, which was the textbook that was taught used in India for 800 years before the Britishers came and abolished Indian teaching. So Lilavati gives you all these various methods. It's not just one way of adding, one way of subtracting, right? And so that suddenly, you just open the kid's mind to think about mathematics in a very different way, and have various ways of approaching mathematics. This is just not in mathematics. This extends through all the other subjects too, right? The way they learn different languages, right? Because of the fact that Sanskrit Vyakaranam has a very good way of absorbing a new language. They'll have the ability to learn languages much faster, and they'll have the ability to break down language in its parts very beautifully, and make it really simple for them to learn a new language, right? And Sanskrit is a very key aspect of what we teach. So these are some key advantages. I know I may have taken a lot more time, and I'd like for Vijayaji now to talk about her successful parenting. I know she's very shy about talking about her success, but want to say that she's raised 2 gems in her home. She's got 2 kids. The elder one is going to Stanford now for his undergrad in bachelor's in computer science, and he has gone through education very similar to Agastya, although there was no Agastya then. Vijayaji personally had to go find teachers from various parts of the world to capture such talent in India for them to teach her kids. And based on that, they stood out so well that both our second kid also going to one of the top schools in the US, and they have fared a lot better than regular school going kids today because of what she's done. And by the way, one more thing I forgot to say was that the teachers that we're going to bring, I think maybe Sangeeta ji will cover that then. These teachers are experts in all these areas, and they would be able to help your kids teach from the original, not even translations. So without any further delay, Vijayaji, go ahead.
Namaste, everybody. So I homeschooled both my kids. And if you thought I was a helicopter parent, my son, second son, who's studying Lilavati of Bhaskaracharya, reminds me that the first helicopter parent was Bhaskaracharya himself, who wrote 270 shlokas in a book called Lilavati, and which was sort of customized for his daughter. And that's the text that Agastya kids learn today. So even the first helicopter parent, so to speak, was from the Vedic tradition. So one of the things that Balaji talked about was why this whole thing is important. We as a generation of parents have lost a lot of our culture. Maybe 2-3 generations have lost it. So my simple goal was to turn back the cultural clock so to speak. And our family was so depleted, or I should say I as a parent was so depleted, that turning back the clock, any little thing that we did, would turn back the clock. So I began homeschooling my kids. Sangeeta would go to the next slide. I don't even know what it says, but I'll try and stick to the script. So I realized very early on that I did not know much, and that my kids were going to, my older one was in a very fancy private school, because everyone said that's where you should put your child. And I quickly realized that that's not the kind of education I wanted. So I pulled them out of school. So one of the things Balaji talked about was Sanskrit being a pillar, and that we should we go to the original texts. So my guru Dayananda Swamiji would joke that once there was somebody who made a translation to a foreign language of the phrase, the spirit is strong and the flesh is weak. So it went to the foreign language and then returned back as a translation. So for the spirit is strong and the flesh is weak, the translation, reverse translation, came back to the native language as the wine was good and the meat was rotten. So the spirit was strong was translated back as the wine was good, and the flesh was weak was translated back as the meat was rotten. So this goes to show you that first of all, translations don't do justice, and secondly, with Sanskrit as a language is non-translatable, because each word contains an ecosystem of ideas. And like, for example, karma is not action. There's a metaphysical level, there's a direct meaning, and then depending on each shastra, there could be different meanings. So it's an ecosystem and therefore not translatable. And so we want the children to actually learn from the original works. Now, what do I mean by turning back the cultural clock? I kind of keep it brief, and we'll open up for question and answers. Essentially, how do you connect the dots across various subjects? So the Vedic vision. So it's not like in modern education now. You have to force in service, or you have to which sort of seems artificial. But with the Vedic vision that Balaji talked about, the Pancha Mahayagyas, service is part of Vedic life. Yeah, you don't have to necessarily call it service. You feed the birds, you help, you do Manusha Yajna by helping someone out. So it's all sort of integrated with the vision. So there is this Vedic vision which gives you the sort of culture and vision are intertwined, and so is the language. So this bhasha is also important, because it gives you the bhava of your attitude, your vision, your lens of how you see the world. Anyway, what was the can you go to the previous slide quickly? Sangeeta, I don't know if I missed something. Okay, so yeah, and then so we talked about turning back the cultural clock, and our generation, we have a unique opportunity where we have technology. We have places like Agastya Gurukulam. When I started off, I had, like Balaji said, I had to find teachers. I had to go helter-skelter to find teachers. So this essentially is a labor of love for all of us. We don't make, this is not something that we do for money or anything. We in fact pour in a lot of our own time, resources, money to make Agastya happen. Because we are all, we feel very, very passionately that somebody's got to do it, and the government hasn't done its part. And we, as individuals, having raised our own children in a somewhat traditional fashion, we want to, share this knowledge with other parents who could be interested in turning back the cultural clock. Now, next slide. So, yeah, Balaji already talked about the Panchamaha Yajna.
I think slide 23, beginning slide 23. Yeah.
Okay. I guess, yeah, 23. So essentially, the underlying theme, for me, was to look at contribution versus consumption. So Sanskrit as a language in poetry, in ideas, in stories, everywhere it talks about being a giver rather than a taker, to be a contributor and not a consumer. It talks about responsibility versus rights. So what it ends up producing is an individual. So you have this education for a period of 10, 15 years, and what it ends up producing is a person that is a value-added contributing member of society, whether it is whatever the occupation might be. And today, in fact, we have people. The Western schooling system actually produces activists who are constantly asking for rights, and who are on picket lines everywhere. So the Vedic education also talks about how can you be a contributor. And so the Panchamaha Yajna, life is a yajna, is essentially what it teaches you. And yajna and yajna essentially means to be a contributor in all different fronts. Yeah. So the benefit to the collective is more important than individual rights versus response. So all these things end up being the core. And it actually, once you're a contributor, right, you end up feeling good about yourself. It enhances self-esteem in the child, because deep down you know that you've actually contributed. And you realize that rights come along with responsibility. If you're willing to take on more responsibility, rights automatically come. You become a leader. Next slide. Yeah. So what do the kids get out of it, right? They are able to see the other side, because today the kids are brainwashed by the regular school system, and they succumb to groupthink. They also appreciate and understand the merits of this education. Just a brief example would be, if they, like my boys have studied Chandas in Sanskritam, which is highly structured. So anything in Indian knowledge, all the Indian knowledge systems have a fantastic grammar, a fantastic set of logic that is applied. It's very, very, if you take the Sanskrit language, it's very phonetic. The way the alphabets are all designed, it's just fantastic. It's very scientific. So for example, the Western, the English meters, prosody goes by stressed and unstressed syllables, like iambic, trochaic, spondaic. These are like two meters with two syllables. And then you will have anapestic, dactylic. So these are all meters in English prosody, which are just stressed and unstressed. So if I say the word emphatic, you won't know what is emphatic, the emph or atic, so it depends on how the pronunciation of the person. Whereas in Sanskrit, the same prosody is very, very different, very logical. Anybody, once they know the rule, can easily apply it. So when you teach them both and they juxtapose it, the kids themselves realize what is superior in terms of structure. Yeah. So this is not an emotional way of telling your kid, oh, everything Indian is great. This is logically to show them, things with structure and design, and things that have great architecture in terms of language or linguistics or whatever, end up being robust, systems. So, in fact, even Sanskrit, the evolution of a word, if you look at in English, they just say the etymology of a word is Greek or Latin. But in Sanskrit, you can actually go to the root and actually develop the etymology and arrive at how a word becomes a certain word. And so there's nothing lost, over time. So these sorts of mechanisms within the language, within our knowledge systems, create that sense of so kids learn to understand logic and can think deeply. And what happens is they have enough ammunition, like Balaji was mentioning, even whether it's modern issues in politics, that they're able to think by themselves and not succumb to what is the fashionable thing to say. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions later. Sangeeta can take on. We're running out of time as well.
Yes, thank you so much. I think I'm going to stop sharing and share one more time, because I think something has gone wrong with the slide. So just give me like a minute or less than a minute to fix that.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's been like running constantly. Like wondering what slide are we in? So,
I'm going to start the screen share again. Okay. So do you guys see what did the kids get out of it? That's the slide you're seeing?
yes, yes.
Okay, okay. Okay, perfect. All right, thank you so much. Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Vijwaji. I'm just going to give a little bit information about the for the summer camp. We are looking to have 20 kids for one per batch. We might have multiple batches given the camp will run for 3 weeks, starting July 20th. It'll be Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. PST to 11:30 a.m. PST. 3 sessions we'll have every day for 45 minutes each, and also have few breaks in between the sessions. Age group is 12 plus. Some of the requirements are, we like you to have a good computer, like a desktop or a laptop with webcam on, a good mic and a good speaker. We would want you to be doing your assignment, be attentive in the class, be on time, participate, and follow simple instructions. And we don't want you to be chatting on your mobile or with the other classmates when the class is going on. And no food is allowed during the classes. Going by the Dincharya Padati, we would like you to actually make sure you take a shower, you do a little bit of exercise, Pitu Vandana, your daily prayers, and also Bhut Bali. I know if you don't have any pet or anything to offer, it's okay to collect some grains every day. And then when the COVID is over, you can go and donate that. Or watering the plants that you have at home, that would be help as well. Or even if you help your parents clean, that would be a help as well. So we want you guys to do all this before you come for the camp every day. How do you register? Just go to our website and register there. What I'm going to do is, at the end of this webinar, I'll stay back for another half an hour for anyone who'd want to register online and have any issues. Well, I can address that. But I think we'll want to open up for Q&A at this point. So there are some questions right now in the chat window, so I'm just going to read that out. Somebody is asking me about the name of the book that Balaji you mentioned. I don't recall.
I think I mentioned Leelavati is one of the books I mentioned.
Yeah. And then somebody wants us to explain the meaning of Dishna. I'm going to leave that to you.
Dhishana means buddhi. In Amarakosha, it's one of the synonyms. So Amarakosha goes buddhir manisha dhishana dhif prajna shemushi mati. So Dhishana is actually the intellect.
Great. Okay. So yeah, and I think somebody asked me about how much time we'll spend on each topic each day. So like I said, there were 45 minute sessions. Some of the topics we will be covering over multiple days, like 3 days. Some of them are 4 days. So they will vary. The focus is a lot on spoken Sanskrit, which we'll have spoken Sanskrit every day for almost an hour and a half. So we'll have 2 sessions of Sanskrit Sambhashanam. I hope that helps. Yeah, I think, yeah, we are from Singapore. Is there any plan for doing in Asian time zone? What time would be, I can't do a conversion in my head right now, what time it would be in Singapore. But if you get us enough students, we don't mind starting a batch at your time zone convenient. Yes, it will be conducted on Zoom. Anyone else has any question, you are more than welcome to raise your hand and we will unmute you and you can ask it.
Somebody says they want to get in touch with me. Oh, Preeta Radhakrishnan. I guess let her ask a question because she wants to talk to me privately. So, I mean, get in touch with me. So I don't mind sharing my email address at the end of it.
The camp will only focus on the spoken Sanskritam part, but after that, when we have weekly classes, the emphasis would also be on reading and writing as well. Somebody's asked us, would a 10-year-old be able to participate? Yeah, you're more than welcome, because the Sanskrit level is very entry level. So they can definitely learn Sanskritam. And even other topics, I think they will probably definitely benefit from it. So yeah, you're more than welcome, because we have few 10 years old who have registered for this program. So yeah. Yeah, there's a question, would there be a math in addition to Sanskrit in the camp? Yeah, we are teaching few topics from traditional mathematics, like Sri Balaji had mentioned. Balaji, do you want to give some more details on that, or?
Yeah, so yeah, we're going to be teaching mathematics. There are two mathematics. One is called Jyotisha Ganitam, or calculations for astronomy. So we're going to start with calculations for eclipse. We may not be able to finish the whole thing, but we'll be teaching a few chapters, and then as we go on for the weekly classes, they'll learn more. So that's one area. The other area is mensuration and potentially some geometry. So this is kind of what we want to cover.
Somebody's asked me, how about a 9-year-old? What do you think for a 9-year-old?
The mathematics part is the part that will get difficult, right? And also some of these subjects that we are going to be teaching, especially around current affairs, right? So for instance, we're going to talk about the war with China, something that we are thinking that we will cover, and kind of talk about, do a Purva Paksha analysis on that, right? Or let's say we're going to talk about Jati versus Varna, right? Sometimes a 9-year-old might find it difficult to grasp all that.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as the 9-year-old is willing to sit through the class, I'd prefer that the parent also sits through such classes, because there may be places where the 9-year-old has blind spots that the parents have to help fix.
Another question is, any books to be bought in advance for this camp? No, you're not required to buy any books. If there's any material that we require, we will provide it to you. So you don't have to buy any books. Somebody asked, is there a prereq for the kids? The prereq, like I said, we want you to be enthusiastic to learn this, to learn it and come every day, following the Dincharya Padati. So that's the only prerequisite. Are kids expected to have a basic knowledge of Sanskrit? No. We are starting with very basic level, like Balaji mentioned. We're getting Sanskrit Bharati teachers to come and teach, and they have developed a very good curriculum in terms of teaching Sanskritam to newbies. So yeah, if you don't have any background in Sanskrit, that's fine. Are there going to be any tests at the end of the camp? I will just keep it as a surprise. We might have something. We test in the form that we might do like a play. We might ask you to group together and do a skit. So that you probably will enjoy that as part of the test and assignment. Are there any other question? If anyone wants to ask, please feel free to raise your hand. We'll unmute you. And
Bhagini, if you don't have any more questions and we have a few more minutes, then you can also play the video from the actual camp we did, because this year we are doing an online camp. But last year we had a lot more fun in an actual camp where we had
right. Yes.
included things like Indian martial arts, like we had Kalari.
Mm-hmm.
Kalari
Let me just play that one.
Yeah.
Let me just see if anyone else has any other questions. I'm going to stop share and yeah, I shared Vijay's email with everyone on this chat, so you should get her email. And you can reach us as info@agastyagurukulam.org or visit us at www.agastyagurukulam.org. At the end of this webinar, we'll send out an email to all of you with the details on how to sign up. And like I said, I will be staying back after the webinar is over for half an hour if you would like to register, and if you have any more questions in terms of registrations, and if you run into any problems. Okay, let me just find the
and I saw this thing about convincing the kids to do assignments. You're right. And this camp, will have very little or no assignments. But when you have like weekly classes, you'll have assignments.
no, not this one.
There's one hand raised.
Okay, I'm going to unmute them.
Hi,
Please
I
go.
just had a question. You talked about the weekly classes. I think that's for the long-term plan. Is that something that we should look at as a once-a-week commitment?
Yes, once a week. We are currently doing it for kids in this age group. We are doing it on Saturdays in the afternoon Pacific time between 3 to 6 p.m. 3 to 3. It goes 3 to 6:30 p.m. at this time. So we wanted to show you this video because this is actually the real full swaroop of this camp. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we are not able to do this whole thing. Where last year we took the kids to Pondicherry and put them up at the Aurobindo Ashram, used their facilities, and also partnered with SAFIC, which is Aurobindo's Center for Cultural Studies. So I think you'll see the video here in a second. Yeah.
Okay, I found it, so I'm gonna play it.
You want a full screen at the beginning? Full screen.
Are you able to see it?
Yeah.
Okay, and here, okay.
Identity and self-confidence. These two things go together, right? Kids of Indian origin in the US have the serious issue of they getting mainstreamed. In the process, they lose the Indian identity, which will help them stay different, but at the same time remain Indian American. However, the kids do not have a good grasp of their mother tongue. Do not have a good understanding of India and the values that they can bring to the American society through Indian values.
Even talking in their own mother tongue is a big pushback. Even though they understand, they read or write or do anything, a number of things. But as soon as they see another kid who speaks the same language, immediately they switch to English and they forget to talk in their native language.
That is the biggest thing that I feel, that as a parent, I cannot even teach them unless they experience that. You are not completely dependent on your iPads and televisions and things like that.
Probably they should start this sort of a course for parents as well. In order to know the beauty of it, you need to experience it. That's what I feel.
what we have done throughout this year here, and especially in the Umesha camp along with traffic, is to help them get an orientation to what their identity really is.
They don't teach these type of things in school. Like when they do like the history about India, they say like they just say some myths and stuff that's not even true. It's like, hey, India is divided in north and south. There's a big difference between north and south, but they're actually one. And this rich Indian, like the Hindu culture, is just so diverse and great. Like, I barely have any words.
Indian way of solving problems in their back pocket, that could always be helpful so that they can play a role in the society, but they are in wherever they are, whether they're in India or in the US, and be solving problems differently if that can help them reach the goal quicker.
I was talking about like cancer research with Ayurveda. How can you stop like using either like dance movements to stop like depression, and using using Ayurveda to stop the cancer, like to stop it from going farther. Oh, we learned about Indic knowledge. We learned about like our shastras. We learned about Vedams. We learned about like all of the Upanishads and everything.
We believe that they can get smarter because they're learning stuff in the original. When we think about like origin of trigonometry or origin of geometry, these are original texts from which they're going to learn these subjects.
Because it's really important for kids to learn about their culture, so when they grow up, they can pass their knowledge on. So I feel that that's a very rich part of being Indian.
The idea of India losing to foreign invaders over a period of time, and we learn about these invasions a lot more, and they get highlighted in our history because our history has been given by the British, and it's been built in a certain way for a reason. And here in this camp, we are actually helping them understand the history of victories in India that actually enabled India to have a continuous civilization for thousands of years.
Honestly, I think I'm so confident I could literally wear a dhoti and walk on the street in America.
Hey. Oh my. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah.
Anyone else has any questions? Okay, not really. Okay. Once again, thank you everyone for your time. Like I said, I'm going to stay back for another half an hour or so. If you guys are trying to register and run into any issues, we are right here. So, Dhanyawada. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Any questions? I'm happy to answer too.
Yeah, me too. I think Preeta had a question. I don't know if it's a private question or if you want to just ask, I'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, there is one question. Somebody asking, are there any private one-on-one sessions being conducted? We have been looking for something like this. Would like to get in touch to explore more. We don't have any private one-on-one lessons. It's good if you learn among with other kids and they bond as well. And if we can, we can always talk more about what all other programs that we have for different age groups after this webinar is over.